Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder when I head out for a walk and deliver an episode to you while I stroll around. I'm Brendan Riley. Today's episode is going to be a little bit of a challenge. I guess, welcome. Thanks for joining me on my walk today, dear listeners. Today's episode will be a little bit shorter, and it'll be a little bit of a challenge because I'm going to do a message from the deep, a deep dive review of a legacy game. What? How can you do that, Brandon? Oh, no. The audience goes a little crazy as they think about the idea of me reviewing a legacy game, especially because I'm going to try to do it with no spoilers. At least, not many. I don't know. We'll see. At some point, I may say spoilers ahead. But my goal is to give you a general idea of how the game plays without going into too many specifics. And then as a bonus treat, I'm going to give you my first impressions of another legacy game right as I wrap up the walk. So it's a 2-for-1, a message from the deep and a shot from the hip mixed into one. We'll call it the Legacy Review Extravaganza Bonanza. That's it. All right, so the game that I'm reviewing deeply is the game my family and I just finished the entire legacy campaign of, and might be the shortest legacy campaign I've played. And this is My City from Reiner Knizia. My City is a tile-laying game from master of all board game design, Dr. Reiner Knizia, whose work I generally enjoy but don't think is incredible. Although I know a lot of people really, really do think it's incredible. Probably in part because his games that are most well-loved I find to be too conflict-heavy. You know, your Tigris and Euphrates, your, what's the bidding one? High Class, no. High Money, no. Something like that. High Society. High Society, which is an interesting idea. You're supposed to buy as much good stuff as you can, but don't be the person who spent the most money. So there's a combination thing going on there that's really fun. And, you know, I enjoyed Tigris and Euphrates the one time I played it. I thought it was pretty clever, but also really mean. So I've played quite a few of his games. I have some of his games. None of them are really like, you know, top contenders for me, but they're good. So he came out with a tile-laying legacy game called My City. So what is My City? In My City, you and up to 3 other players are building a city over and over again. It's a tile-laying game, not unlike something like Barren Park or Patchwork, in which you are putting out city tiles on the board. At the beginning of the game, each player gets a relatively unscathed personal player board that they'll put their name on, and they'll name the city that they're building. I believe my city was called Eagle Junction. And then you get a set of tiles. The tiles come on punch boards, and each player gets the same 24 tiles. This is one of the clever bits of the game. Everybody's got the same set of tiles, and the way that you're playing them depends on drawing cards. This is a mechanism I've seen in other places, of course. Welcome to uses this as a way to govern which things you're marking. Trails of Tucana, which I talked about last time, use cards as a way to say where you're going to be drawing a line, even though you don't know which spot you're drawing a line in, or that's not consistent. And then this game uses the cards to have you draw or place a specific tile, which is something I had 2 years ago in the Bruno Cathala game Scarabia, which I got from a friend, which was fine. It wasn't great, and I did sell it eventually because it was one of those ones where we played it a couple times. We're probably not going to play it too much more. Move it on to another household. But the idea is solid. You have a deck of cards, you flip it, everybody places that tile. That's what you're doing in My City. So in My City, you start with 24 tiles in 3 different colors. So you have 3 of each shape in each different color. And at the beginning of the game, you have a set of scoring conditions that are shaped by the scenario pack that you're working on. My City is designed to be played over 8 sessions in the legacy mode. Each session you get an envelope that you open up, and it has a rules sheet and some stickers and sometimes something else, and adds a change in gameplay to the essential game that you learn in the first packet. So in the first packet, you punch out everything, you hand it all out. Then you play the essential, you open up the first packet and it teaches you how to play. Each play adds a slightly different rule or modifies it a little bit, and you earn points toward your final score that will determine who wins at the end of the campaign. So how do I talk about this without giving away the changes that come in the envelopes? Well, why don't I talk about why it was fun? My city ended up being pretty fun for a number of reasons. The first was balance, really good balance. So as the game goes along, it gives you a variety of different things you can try to pursue in order to get points. Like many of these games, it's very difficult to pursue all of them. And the challenge of trying to keep all of them in your head and pursue them at once reminded me of Barren Park, when you have one of the expansions in there, trying to figure out how to pursue the goals and fill your map and get all the different things and build the monorails in Barren Park. That fit. Or Calico. Calico also has this competing set of scoring goals that get into your head and, challenge you to think about the game in multiple ways at the same time. And at its best, that's what My City is doing. It's giving you a variety of challenges that you need to try to fulfill. And each challenge gives you a different thing to think about. And often you have 2 or 3 of those going at once. On the downside, it does feel a little bit like people who are better at the game will win every time. The game does give you a little bit of consolation prize if you come in. Like we played 4-player. My wife and my daughter and my son and I played the entire campaign together. And the game does gives the 2 people who come out on top points and sometimes a penalty in the form of something that interferes with your play later. And then the people who come out on the bottom half of that equation get some sort of bonus to try to help them do better next time. I guess I found that most of the time those bonuses helped a little, but they never really seemed to swing the pendulum very far. And as our campaign went on, the person who was ahead stayed in the lead and continued to climb into the lead toward a really significant victory, like the easily 25% more points for the winner than the next place person had. So that wasn't ideal for the overall campaign, but it didn't really matter to me. The individual gameplay of this game is just really solid. Like the experience of the bingo style, we all get the same thing, we're all going to put it on the board, and we all get the next thing, we all put it on the board, and we see who comes out better. It's a really interesting puzzle to solve. The varying scoring conditions that come up during the campaign are different enough that each game feels kind of unique, yet you never really have to relearn the game. You just have this one new rule to learn. Toward the end, there are quite a few rules in play that make the game a bit crunchy and a bit difficult to remember, particularly the first session of any play. I don't think I've explained the session. So the way the game envelopes work, each envelope is called a chapter, and there are 8 of these chapter envelopes in the box. Within the chapter, there are instructions for 3 different games of My City. So the idea is that you play 3 games, and each game takes between 20 and 30 minutes in a sitting. And then you have 8 sittings, and then you've completed the game. And then on the back of each player board, there is a generic non-legacy version of the game that allows players to play the eternal game. So My City is designed once you've finished, then you can just keep playing My City using the eternal rules, which give you a set of rules to play that don't alter the board. I will say I have not looked at those eternal rules, so I don't know which parts of the main rules they keep. And frankly, I wouldn't tell you if I did, because I would tell you if I know or not, but I wouldn't tell you which rules there were because I don't want to spoil the legacy part. In terms of value, My City is a great deal. A lot of legacy games cost quite a bit of money and take an intense amount of time. Gloomhaven, I'm looking at you. But they also have really high rewards. My City is an entry-level family game. Really not too hard, but crunchy. Kind of right in the realm of the games I was talking about last week, your New York Zoos or your Gingerbread House, particularly Gingerbread House, and it feels like that level. And with only 8 sessions, it feels doable in a way that, legacy games that have 20 or 30 sessions, they're kind of daunting. And with the fact that it has a universal eternal play mode means that you don't feel like you've gotten shortchanged when the campaign ends because you can keep playing it. I will say I don't know how often it's going to get played. I'll be interested to see if in the next few months anyone suggests playing it. I know my son won't. I think he was tired of it by the time we got done. And all of this for a package that retails at $35. $35, maybe $40. I know I've seen it online at $35, but it might have been $40 at the game store. Either way, it's a good deal for that price. For the legacy part, I will say the components themselves feel a little on the cheap side. If you compare the city tiles in My City to the city tiles or to the Bear tiles in Barron Park, the My City ones are probably 3mm cardboard and the Barron Park ones are 5. And you could tell the difference. They feel less hefty. Now, in terms of gameplay, it was fine. I didn't feel like the game was cheap or anything. So they were within the tolerance of a decent game, reasonable production. But they are on the cheaper side. Then again, it's only $35. So that's my take on My City from Reiner Knizia and Cosmos Games. Now, like I said, I did my best to not reveal any of the legacy components, so there's lots more to talk about. Maybe at some point I'll do a big spoiler episode where I talk about the 8 different chapters and what I liked and didn't like. But for now, that's going to be it for the discussion of My City. And now on to the shooting from the hip part of the episode. Like I said, I was going to talk about one legacy game just for a couple minutes based on early plays. And this is, the game I've been looking forward to since they announced it last April. The game that when I ordered it, it was hard to not just play it right away. The game that we're very excited to team up with our friends and play at least once a month for the next year. This is Pandemic Legacy Season 0. Now, as you know, dear listener, Pandemic Legacy is in my top 50 games. I don't remember where I put it on the list, but I love it. I think the design of the game is excellent. I think that Pandemic Legacy Season 1 still sets the high bar for what a legacy game canon should be, and I love it. I think it's great, and I'm really excited to be starting Season 0. So we've played one legacy game of Season 0, and we played the prologue game once as well. The prologue game is set up to be something you could play as many times as you want to try to get the feel for how a pandemic game should work and how you win this particular pandemic game, because there's a lot going on. I would recommend playing the prologue game. We contemplated just jumping right into the legacy game, and I'm glad we didn't. There's a lot of different things going on in this one, and even if you've played Pandemic before and you understand the basic flow of, say, cards and how what in regular Pandemic would be called outbreaks work or epidemics work, all of that is just slightly different in Season 0. And so I would recommend playing the prologue game just to make sure you and your team are on the same page about how the game works before you're making decisions that involve tearing up cards and stickering things. So how does it work? Well, Pandemic Legacy Season 0 is focused on the 1960s and the idea of espionage. You play doctors recruited right out of med school into the CIA to work for the CDC spy division or something. It's not entirely clear. But the game is premised on the idea that Russia is working on a bioweapon and we need you to stop it. So in the game, again, you're flying around to cities to take care of problems. There's an interesting mechanism. Oh, by the way, everything I'm saying here is all in the instruction book. None of it involves any legacy components that are opened. So I'm not spoiling anything, I don't think. Each city is given a status as an allied city, a neutral city, or a Russian city. And you, as an investigator, have an alias that matches the allied alias. So you're able to go fly in and out of the allied cities easily. But then there are, you can go to the other cities, you just have to have cards that let you go in and out of those in specific ways. Instead of disease cubes, this game has Soviet agents, these cute little red trench coat, fedora hat wearing agents who sort of gather in the cities and cause trouble if they get too many of them there. You go to the cities and neutralize them, which it's unclear what we're doing. Are we exposing them? Are we blowing their covers so they have to go home? Are we murdering them? This is the part, my least favorite part of the game. It feels like we're murdering them. And one of the things you do is you recruit teams of, I presume, assassins to drive around in these little vans. And when you send the van to a city, any Soviet agents that are in that city will just disappear before the next round. Yikes. So that's an interesting piece of the game. The narrative is a bit darker because we're neutralizing spies. That said, The gameplay feels very much like Pandemic, with a twist. The rules are different enough that they take some thought and care and conversation, and generally the gameplay it's good old Pandemic mixed in with delightful legacy business. Everything I like about Pandemic Legacy returning again for the third time. And this will be the final time, I understand. This is the end of the cycle. They're not going to do a Pandemic Legacy Season 3, because this is the third game, but they call it Season 0 because it goes back in time before Season 1. So that is a quick glimpse of Pandemic Legacy Season 0. I hope that sounded fun. So what legacy games are you playing, dear listener? I over Christmas I did make progress in the MacGyver escape game. We've done 4 of the 5 scenarios now. We started Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. I've done 2 scenarios from that. I'm probably not going to talk about that very much in terms of review because I talk about Gloomhaven a lot, and it's basically Gloomhaven. I know it's designed for new people, but I don't think I can give a very good reflection of how that works or what that might mean, since I'm not a new person. So anything I do with Gloomhaven, I already know what's going on. I do keep track of the unlock and escape games that I play. Those aren't really campaigns. So in terms of campaign games, we're relatively low on what we're playing, which is fine by me. We have a bunch of games I want to get off the shelf, so to speak, and now's my opportunity to do that. We finished with My City. I'm looking forward to the next thing. Well, I hope that your year has started off well. If you didn't catch my Top of the Stack episode 2 episodes ago, please do go listen to that and join me over on the Board Game Geek Guild 3269 to let me know what you're playing, what you've selected as games to play in January. And, did you get any good games over Christmas? Have you played My City, etc., etc.? Like I said, my goal is to finish out the season with episode 300, and then I will take a break while my zombie class finishes up, and then we'll be back for season 4 sometime in late January. If you'd like to reach out, other than the Board Game Geek Guild, you can email me, brendan@rattleboxgames.com, or you could reach out to me to play a game. I regularly visit Board Game Arena and Boîte à Jeux and Yukata. On all 3, I play asynchronous games, usually making 1 or 2 moves a day. I would love to play a game with you. You can reach out to me either on Board Game Geek, where my username is Wombat929, or on any of those platforms, where my username is also Wombat929. Thanks for joining me on my walk today. I hope your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.